This is Ned Ferguson. Welcome to Cad Lesson 6. Hopefully you're noticing a big jump in audio quality. I've purchased a new microphone. We recently moved and I lost the blue snowball that I had. Somehow it got lost in the shuffle. So now I'm using a Rode USB NT microphone. Before I was just using a webcam. So hopefully this sounds a lot better. In keeping with our last lesson, we're going to continue talking about plotting plats and deeds. I've got a file open here that I just happen to be working on at the moment. This is an expensive piece of lake property in River Sound. And you can see that we have done some plotting here. Our subject property is lot 8. And we've got a lot more information than just lines. We've got calls along the boundaries. Right here we have an easement plotted. So that's one of the things we want to include in our plots. If we have a subject piece of property that has easements going across it, whether it's access, utility easements, or any other encumbrance that is reflected in the record, we want to plot that and show that also. Anything that affects that property that's of record that we can plot, we want to plot and put in here. So you'll notice also that this is a block that I've got. If I select it, it moves as one unit. The question is, how do we get what we've been doing from what we've been doing to this point where it's fully annotated with calls, lot numbers, easements, and it's a block. That's what we're going to cover right now. I'm going to copy this over, and then I am going to explode this block, and then that turns it into individual entities. So I am going to work backwards here a little bit. I'm going to isolate these calls in this text layer. Get rid of that. Restore those layers. Get rid of, you notice we put here how the lots close. That's helpful information to have. Put that at the point of closure. We'll get rid of our text. So now we're back to just having line work. How do we begin annotating our sketch? Over here to the left-hand side on the toolbars, we have the first toolbar that I like to dock here are the calls. And on each toolbar, there is a little illustration of exactly how that is going to label the line. So the first toolbar up here is bearing over distance. It's going to put the bearing on top of the line and the distance underneath. Next toolbar down is just the opposite. Distance on top of the line, bearing underneath it. Next toolbar down is just bearing of the line, either top or underneath it. And so on. Distances, bearing distance on one line, on top of the line or underneath it. And this tells you exactly what you're doing. So you can just hunt how you want this to look over here or what will fit on a particular line and use that annotation type. I'm already going to have the drawing set up, the scale set and everything for you, so you can just begin working. Over here on this next toolbar to the right, we have curve labels, and I always just use this stack label command. I don't bother with the rest of it as far as annotating is concerned. So let's go ahead and label a curve first. We'll pick this stack label, and I'm going to click on the arc, and you can drag this anywhere you like and just plop it. If I wanted to move that around, I would use my move command, M for move it wherever I like. Then I can take this arrow, highlight it, drag it over to the line wherever I want. Now, the way this command works, the bearings and curve labels work the same in this regard. I'm going to click the toolbar again, and I want my label to be in a clockwise direction bearing wise. I want this to be northeast because this is in the northeast quadrant and that's clockwise. If it was going counterclockwise, it would be southwest. If I wanted the bearing to read southwest, I would pick the far portion of the arc, and it will read in a southwest direction. If I click the nearer portion of the arc, it reads northeast. So that's how this works. If I click to the left of the midpoint, let's say, it's going to read in a northeast direction. If I click to the right of the midpoint, southwest. So that's how that works. You can set it up where it does differently, but that's Carlson's default, and I didn't see any reason to change it. So that's how we leave it. So you can just click around. My favorite label is where it's both bearing and distance on the same line. If it will fit on there, that's the one I like to use. I typically label the lots to the exterior of our subject property. Can't always do that, depending on how it works out. There might be some other text or an improvement or something in the way to cause an overlap, but if I've got room to do it, I always label to the exterior of our property. So this is where an easement line is overlapping another line. In that case, I can send that underneath, or I can freeze this layer altogether until I get my lot annotated the way I want, and then I can turn it back on. Okay, this is a little too tight, so in this case I'm going to put the bearing over the distance here, like so. You can do the same thing on all these lines. This one is going to be a little clumsy to have the label on the line, so I'm going to use a leader line, which is down here to the left. There's a bearing distance with leader toolbar. That's the one I typically use. Click it and drag it where you like it, where it looks good. Then I'm going to go back to distance over bearing for this line. It's very short. Back to bearing and distance on one line. You can just continue in this fashion till everything gets labeled and you're sure that everything has a label. If you're not sure, just highlight the entity. Make sure you're not missing a small line segment somewhere. have some more curves here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. I am not. So I think that's got it. I'm going to turn my easement layer back on, which in this case we just use the utility layer because it creates a dash line type that we like. That's for utility easements. Now if I want to annotate something on the drawing and I want it to be parallel to an existing line, I use this little toolbar up at the top in the middle. It's called a joiner text. We use this a good deal. So if you click this toolbar and then click Align Segment, then it asks you for a starting point for the text. I'm just going to click over here in space, and that will be Center Justified Text. You click wherever you want, and you can start typing. So I know that this is a 60-foot utility and access easement. I like to have my caps on. And when you hit enter, it orients the text automatically parallel to the line segment that you chose. This is a very handy command to use. We use it a good deal. I'm going to do the same thing up here for the road label. You can do an arc the same way and it will make it parallel roughly to the arc where you selected it. This is called Thimble Fields Drive. I like my text for the road name to be larger, so I'm going to scale that up by about 1.5, and then I'm going to move it around where I like it. This dashed line over here is just a meander line that was on the plat where there are monuments set, so we're not going to worry about labeling that just now. Now we want to add some lot numbers. I'm going to come over here to my draw palette and select sequential numbers right here. And it asks you for a starting number. I want it to look like this figure over here looks, this other block that was existing. So it looks like our lowest lot is number 6. So we'll start there. We want a circle, not a square or a hexagon or any of the rest of these things. We keep it set on circle most of the time, unless it's a 3-digit number, in which case we will change it to oval to accommodate the numbers better. But for right now, it's circle. Click OK, and you notice it's going to increment the lot number. It says increment by 1. You can set this to any value you want, but typically we keep it set to increment 1 at a time. So just select over here in space 6. It asks for a rotation or alignment for your first one. I just right click and accept the default, which is usually east, and that works. So you don't have to do that again. You can just start selecting points. 8. Let's see. 10. Now we're going to go up here to 11, 12, 13, and let's just accept 14 right here. Now what I'm going to do is just double click that and change it to a 16, which matches the plat. So you can edit this text just by double clicking, or you can use this edit text toolbar right here. Does the same thing. Now I might slide these lot numbers around a little so they're more centered in the lot, but that looks pretty good. And I am pretty happy with that. And we are essentially at the same place where we started. I see that I left a few little calls off here. So let's fix that. And I think there's a small segment here. So I'm going to move this whole thing so it's a little clear and there's no overlaps. We always want to avoid overlapping text with any entities or any other text. And this is looking pretty good. I can put calls along this meander line as well. And this is about where we want it. So now I am going to turn all these separate entities into a block. You do that by using the block command, B-L-O-C-K. Now it wants a block name. So we'll just call it plat. Now sometimes we have multiple plats because subdivisions back up against one another. So I can call it, say, plat of River Sound. It wants a base point. So I am just going to select any point. It doesn't matter at this point which one I select. We're just going to make it random. I could select an endpoint of a line like I just did, or anywhere in space here. In this case, it just doesn't matter. I'm going to select my entities. And the existing entities on the screen, you can either retain them and keep them individual entities, or you convert them to a block where they sit. I want to convert them so they turn into a block on finishing this command. So I'm going to click OK, and it turns it into a block. If I use my keyboard and query it with the list command, li, select it, right click, it tells me that this is an insert. An insert and a block are the same thing. It tells me the block name right here, Plat of River Sound. Now, the handy thing about blocks is I can erase this. I can erase all instances of this block. If I use the I or insert command to insert a block, you can see that it has retained the block name in our list of blocks that reside in the drawing. I have a pull down. I can select any blocks that currently reside in this drawing. But what we want right now is the Plat of River Sound block. I can insert this block anywhere I want on the screen. I can specify. If that's deselected, it will insert it at these coordinates 0, 0, 0, but I don't want to do that. I want to select where that block goes. I'm going to deselect the scale. I don't want to change that because we want the scale to be just as we created it. If we scale it up or down, it's going to distort the distances. We don't want that. We don't want to re-rotate it. That's going to distort the bearings. We keep the orientation just as we had it. So click the insert button. Now, this explode toggle right here, we don't want that to be on either. If you have that toggle, it will insert it as individual entities again, but we want it to stay a block. Click the insert button, select it anywhere on the screen, and there it is. You can copy multiple instances of the block. You can insert multiple instances if you want, but we just want the one. Now let's explode this again. I'm going to go over here to my Edit tab, Explode, turn it back into individual entities. There is another command that you can use that is called Group instead of Block. This is a relatively new phenomenon in CAD, and I can't say that I've used it very much, but if you prefer, you can group the entities together. You get this dialog when you enter the group command. It wants a name, so I can just the same call it Plat of River Sound. I can enter an additional description if I want. I don't need to do that. Select entities and create group. Right here, there's a button. I just select all those. And click OK. Now it has grouped those entities together. If I want to ungroup them, I can just enter the ungroup command, and it will ungroup them. The thing about groups, if I erase this and it's gone from the drawing, and I enter the group command again, as far as I know, there is no way to recover the group. It lists it here, but it doesn't bring it back. And I don't think there is a way to redraw it, to recover it once you've done this. I see rename group, change group description, added entities, remove entities from the group. You can make these various edits, but I don't believe that you can insert it in the same manner as you do a block. So that's one disadvantage. I'm going to undo to bring it back. There we go. So there's two variations you can do on grouping these entities together. But I typically use the block command and am not that familiar and have not used the group command very much. And it has the advantage of saving your creation in memory within the drawing that the group command does not apparently have. I'm going to end it here today and let you work on these concepts, and we'll pick it up again next time. I'll probably go into much greater depth on blocks and groups. It's a complicated subject and one for another day.